So I think it's a good announcement. We're not sure that it's the best way that the government could have possibly used the money, but as a signal of supporting vocational skills, particularly in construction, it's got to be a good thing.
Ben, you know far more about this than me, so I'm glad to hear that you agree with me that this is the future. Why is it the future, do you think? Why are vocational qualifications the way forward?
I think there's a couple of things going on. I think the speed with which jobs now change mean that going to a sort of it used to be that going to university for 3 or 4 years, sort of slowly and steadily learning how to order your thoughts and do research and then come out in the top 20% of the population and move into the top 20% of jobs in a rather sort of measured way is rapidly becoming a thing of the past. And actually, if you don't learn how to learn while you're earning, then you're going to be in trouble, I think. And that's the key thing to a lot of these vocational programs, is that yes, you're learning the skill. You might be learning, for example, how to lay bricks or to get piling into the ground for the foundations, but actually that's going to change every year how you do that. But if you're not in that, and if you haven't learned how to learn those new skills as the technology develops, you're going to be behind, I think.
And you look at figures like the fact that 600,000 university graduates are now claiming benefits because they can't get a job. You look at the cost of university, Ben, and a lot of young people would be absolutely within their rights to conclude that it's increasingly a complete waste of time doing a degree.
I think the thing is, it's one of those things where roughly 50% of people going to university will get no benefit from it. But of course, every young person, I include my daughter who gets her A-level results on Thursday, will think that if they decide to go to university, they'll imagine, because we're all optimists, that they'll be in the 50% for whom it will work.
And a lot won't.
But 50% or thereabouts, it really won't work, and they're left with, and I know plenty of people like this who've gone on, done their degree, they've even gone and done their masters, they've got a first-class degree, they've got a distinction in their masters, and 3 years later they're working in a retail outlet. Nothing wrong with working in a retail outlet, by the way, but to have 50 grand of debt hanging on your shoulders and getting, while you're doing it, is probably not your best course of action.
But I take your point. But when you say no benefit, I mean, there are people that say university is not supposed to be about just churning out the workers of tomorrow. It's about broadening your horizons and, developing your passions and getting the life experience and meeting new people and moving away from home and becoming independent and all the rest of it, that you probably don't get if you're just doing a plumbing course at your local college. So is there an advantage to university, a broader advantage, that you don't get with a vocational education?
Again, possibly for some people. I mean, for some people, the kind of the infrastructure and support to move away from home is sometimes a crucial moment in their life. If they've had live in a very if they've had a really difficult childhood, then moving away at 18 to university can be absolutely brilliant. But as we know on that, I mean, a growing number of students, because of the money, are choosing to live at home. So that whole argument about, cutting the apron strings just doesn't work. And then I think, that if you say that you can't broaden your horizons while, doing a plumbing apprenticeship, of course you can.
I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying that the whole university experience is harder to replicate if you're not, there for 3 years living. I take your point. More and more aren't living away from home, but it's hard to replicate that kind of holistic education that you get at university.
Well, I think you're right. It depends, right? When you talk about that holistic education, there's I know plenty of people who are getting 6 hours contact time a week.
Well, that was me. That was me. 6 hours.
I know, but you and I, when we were at university, weren't paying for it.
Well, so I had $3.5 grand, but I wasn't paying 9.
So you're a younger man than me, but I was not paying a penny for it. I had a good time. I still look back on that and say, and I did a 4-year undergraduate degree and then a master's, and I think, what could I have done with those 5 years? So I met some amazing people. I had a great time, but that's 5 years I could have spent doing loads of other things as well. So this idea that I think lots of us have is because we had a formative time at university, and because some of our mates for life were made at university, it was because we were at university. Actually, it's probably because we were 18, 19, 20, had no obligations and were living a good life. And I think that's true. I've seen that when I ran an apprenticeship program for 8 years, and we had for one of the big technology companies, we had people coming from all over the country. They were house sharing. They were doing all the student things you'd have. It's just they were earning a good wage. They had a much better time.
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. Ben, just finally, I wonder how big a problem snobbery is when it comes to vocational education, where you get a lot of sort of middle-class people going, oh, yes, wonderful, wonderful, all these vocational courses, but not for my little darling. They're off to Oxford and Cambridge. Whether there's still this sense of sort of a bit of snootiness about the value of apprenticeships and vocational courses, or is that becoming less of an issue?
I think it's more subtle than that and possibly more insidious too, which is that I think that we don't really have any marker for successful parenting. So I heard a number today and from the States. They surveyed parents. 62% of parents said that if their child didn't go to university, they would consider themselves a failure. And you will see in about a month's time on Facebook, if you have friends of university age children, the very proud photos of people taking little Johnny or off to university. Yep. And it's a mark of the parental success. It's like, I've got my kid to university, I've done my bit. If it doesn't go well from here, it's not my fault. But if you're in my position and you're encouraging your child perhaps to consider other options, what happens if in 5 years' time it hasn't worked out? And I won't be able to fall back on saying, well, at least I went and got them to university.
But that's what I mean. Is there still this sort of sense of prestige about going and doing a degree?
Safety net, I think.
Yeah, in a way that we perhaps don't have with doing the sort of qualifications that the government's talking about today. Maybe that needs to change.
I think so. I would be with you on that 100%.
Great stuff. Really interesting. Thank you very, very much for coming on. Ben Rowland is Chief Executive of the Association of Employment and Learning Providers, which supports its members in delivering vocational learning, and author of Understanding Apprenticeships, a Student Guide.